Good morning, Beth. I'm Pete Cooper, Director of the Aerospace Village, and on behalf of the team, welcome to the Aerospace Village at Virtual DEF CON 28. Not quite what we all thought was going to be the plan, but let's face it, 2020 is trying to throw as many curved balls at us as possible. So while we're all trying to stay safe and healthy, we've got an amazing 3 days of virtual content lined up for you, irrespective of you being completely new to this or whether you're a seasoned black badge holder. Aviation is really a cornerstone of the global infrastructure and economy. And while passenger safety is an all-time high, the increasing adoption of connected and digitized technologies is exposing aircraft, airport satellites, and the interdependent aerospace ecosystem to new types of risks and threats. And the consequences of a cybersecurity failure in a ground, air, or space-based system can impact human life, public safety, and even a crisis of confidence in the trustworthiness of air travel, which could undermine economic and national security. And as those traditional domains of aviation safety and security increasingly overlap, the more we can collaborate to all stakeholders ensures that we're going to be safer and sooner together. The Aerospace Village is a non-profit set up and led by a volunteer team of hackers, pilots, engineers, policy advisors who come from both across the public and private sectors. And why have we done this? Because we want to build an inclusive community around the topic of aerospace security, inspire you to get involved in one of the most amazing and growing areas of research that's out there, and promote and build aerospace cybersecurity knowledge and expertise. And through the Aerospace Village, the research community really is inviting everybody, be they industry leaders, researchers, academia, anybody interested in aviation, space security, safety and resilience, to come in, understand, learn and collaborate together. Because empathy and understanding is going to build common ground. Any sort of acts and words looking to increase division between the communities is going to undermine the efforts of us working together. So we're looking to welcome anybody and everybody who's wanting to improve aviation and space, security, safety and resilience through positive and productive collaboration. This isn't just a cool topic with a huge scope of cool tech. There's loads of research on the topic already, but it's a global topic and it's only getting bigger, and there's so much that is out there that is great to look at and explore. Last year we had the Aviation Village at DEF CON, and that was our first year, and we had great activity across airports, air traffic management and aircraft, and great engagement. It's all massively interconnected and interdependent, and we started building out bridges across the community and industry. And since then, on the importance of such efforts, there's been some great progress. For example, international initiatives, the UN Body for Aviation, which is ICAO, with 193 member states, published late last year their first cybersecurity strategy for aviation, which specifically called out that states should give adequate protection to good faith researchers. And that's more and more recognition that such research like this is a positive thing, and it needs to be encouraged as well as protected. And additionally, there's also industry initiatives. For example, Boeing standing up an industry cyber technical council that actually incorporates the research and hacking community working with the team there. So this year we've evolved into the Aerospace Village. Aviation is critically dependent on space, and the sector is really the aerospace sector. So yeah, we rolled into space and we've now got a security community that's stretching from Earth into orbit. And a big part of that effort this year is the HackerSat CTF, which is pretty much the coolest CTF that isn't on the planet, and more of that later. It's amazing the support that we've got this year to help put on an amazing event for you over the next 3 days, and that support stretches from the USAF, DDS, CISA, Boeing, the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, both the Aviation and Space ISACs, TALIS, Capital Tech University, California Polytechnic, Pentest Partners, I'm the Cavalry, Rapid 7, and even astronaut Pam Melroy is here, and more, all looking to try and give you as great an experience and learn as much and play with as much as you want to over the next 3 days. We've got everything from topics on aircraft, airports, air traffic management, so air traffic control, aircraft, and space, everything from satellites to ground stations. And we've got talks, panels, workshops, and CTFs, and everything from beginning to advanced. So please find our website at aerospacevillage.org, which has got the schedule and more content about what's on and what we're doing both now for DEF CON and as we're going forwards. And subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at Secure Aerospace. And finally, to really pull together and drive this amazing event, it takes an amazing team. And it's an honor to be a part of that amazing team. So please, floating around the virtual village, look out for the village leads and those team members, say hi and thanks. They are the most awesome group of people that pull this together. So next up are two guest speakers that are going to help us open up the Aerospace Village this year. Partnerships are going to be really important to help build out this community and build trust between the hacking and researching community and industry and government. So it's great to have them here speaking at the opening. So the first is CISA Director Chris Krebs, and this is the conversation that I had with him. Thank you. So welcome everybody to the Aerospace Village, and I'm honoured to have Director CISA Chris Krebs with us to help with the opening. So good morning, Chris.
Hey Pete, thanks for having me. Good to be here with you and the Aerospace Village, formerly the Aviation Village.
It's a journey, it always is. You came to the Aviation Village last year. We've got the Aerospace Village this year, and I know that you and the CISA team are working really, really hard on the aerospace sector. But what's unique, do you think, about the aerospace sector when it comes to some of the challenges that we're facing across the security perspective?
Yeah, I think it's representative of almost everything else in the kind of almost the industrial or life safety space. Things that historically have not been connected or relied upon overly networked systems, IT systems that either touch the internet or have paths of entry. That's different than it was 10 plus years ago. When a plane used to lose the contact with the earth, it also lost contact, generally speaking, with communications channels. So what we're seeing now, though, is due to various customer demands, other navigation requirements, that, yeah, there are pathways into a plane. And frankly, what's at stake? And we're really, truly talking about lives here. So when I look at both aviation, but more broadly aerospace, it's not just about the things that are moving around in the air. It's the things that are going through the infrastructure itself. Look at what's happened here in the U.S. over the last year or so. It's the establishment of Space Command. Why? It's because the space-based infrastructure is that critical to just day-to-day operations. When you talk about PNT, when you talk about satellite-based communications, it really is a incredibly critical slice of not just our infrastruccture, but of, frankly, our economy.
So do you think that the threat actors are different to the other sectors, or is this still the same sort of threat environment that we're looking at here?
Well, I do think that there are a couple different things you got to think about with the threat actors. So yes, they're absolutely threat actors that are focusing in on this aerospace ecosystem, and not that it's been a steady state thing. I think it's increasing. They're understanding the ability and the capability, particularly when you talk about functional disruptions. The future of warfare is not necessarily going to be on the plains of Europe. The first strike capabilities that you would see launched through against our infrastructure are things we need to be thinking about. And that's, from an elections perspective, election infrastructure perspective, that's what I've been talking about now for years. What was so dramatic or significant about the 2016 interference with the U.S. election was it was almost a Sputnik moment. Take us back to 1957, and the Soviets at the time put Sputnik into low Earth orbit. It wasn't that they got to space first. It was that they had an ICBM. They had this capability to overcome geographic distancing and reach out and touch us. Why was 2016 the same? It was because cyber could be used as that tool to reach out and touch us and destabilize democracy. I think the future, again, of conflict is going to be using these infrastructure aspects against us to undermine our confidence, undermine our ability, or undermine our willingness to do the things that need to be done.
And thanks for that. And so it shows that really that this is touching on pretty much all the themes about trust and resilience across all of the other sectors as well. But for those that are sort of new into the aerospace sector, and we've got loads of researchers and hackers that are now really engaging on the topic, what's the key challenge for yourselves on trying to look at the safety and security aspects of it? Because it's a safety critical industry, so we've got the FAA and also CISA in the frame as well. Can you try and help explain to the audience out there is actually how does that balance work on working through safety and security with the different partners that are out there?
So, oh, wow. So, you know, there are the technical aspects of it, actually getting access to the equipment. This is not kit that you can typically just find out there hanging on eBay. So there are some proprietary systems that you've got to be able to get access to and work in an environment that's trusted. And I think that's the second aspect. Beyond the technical, it's the relationship piece and the trust. You know, this is, I think, that constant struggle, that constant tension between the research community and the owner operators or the vendors is how do you have an effective, a meaningful conversation about security and trust when you add life safety. Same things for the medical device community too. You know, unfettered access into a piece of equipment that has life safety implications is not something to be toyed with. And you want to make sure that you've got open lines of communication. You're not just dropping a vuln onto the open market without giving the folks that are maintaining those systems the appropriate time to control or to implement. But that also, you know, when you talk about these proprietary systems, there are some DCMA and other issues that really restrict the ability or the access. So we have looked over the last several years to help really foster those conversations, to bring the security researcher community together with the vendor community. And it's been a journey. You talk about the journey from the aviation village to the aerospace village. It's really been a journey, and I am so incredibly you know, impressed by a number of the bigger companies out there that you know, a year and a half ago weren't particularly interested, for instance, in participating in the village, but now they're meaningful, full bore, full throated supporters and members because they get the kind of force multiplier aspect. I'd rather have you on my team than working against me. That sort of mentality has really taken root, and we're you know, proud to be a part of that effort to keep driving forward.
No, thanks. And it's that challenge of trying to make sure the dialogue's there because the perspectives are different. And it feels like trying to fit a really small Venn diagram together and just getting that common ground in the middle. But what do you think, CISA? I mean, I know, and partnering with us on the village is great. But what do you think we, the village and the community, and CISA would want to be doing in the next sort of year? I mean, how do you think that can work better across all of those stakeholders, and also as well, what message would you be giving to industry across that as well?
Yeah. So last year, for instance, we were kind of silent partners, helping again facilitate some of the conversations, but not a financial supporter, not a, you know, really staffing supporter. We had folks there last year in Vegas. This year, much more engaged in the planning, bringing the partners together, working with the information sharing and analysis centers, working with the vendors. I think going forward, I really want to see, you know, assuming we, and hopefully we get through this current pandemic where we can get back together physically, really would love to see more practical environmental environments that we can bring researchers in to take, you know, start shooting holes in things, figuratively, not literally. But, you know, we've been working in our industrial control systems initiative to develop environmental laboratories. So our Cellar program, where we've got control systems environments that folks can mess around with, that they can either conduct research on. We can tailor them to specific environments like water, but also I think aviation is a great opportunity going forward where we can continue, you know, it's almost like democratizing security for the control system space, including the aerospace environment. Again, it's just making these partnerships more accessible to everyone and much, much more open. And again, the concept here really more than anything is let's democratize this. It does not happen overnight. So we've all got to be patient, keep plucking away. And yeah, sometimes various parts of the community raise their voice and get a little frustrated with others, but keep working on it. And the more we work on it, the more trust we'll build and the more we'll be able to do in the out years.
And is this the same journey that you've seen across the other sectors as well? I mean, from what we're seeing across the research and hacker community and the dialogue that we've got with industry and regulators and everybody, is that actually this is a journey that has its ups and downs, and it's not always an easy path because there are so many different and quite strong perspectives out there. But it sort of feels like this is a journey that other sectors have gone through as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'll make second elections. So if somebody's got the Chris Krebs bingo card, if I don't mention election security like 6 times in any speech, even if it has nothing to do with election security, and I failed. But election security is a great example. So in 2016, when it first started becoming apparent what the Russians were trying to do, there wasn't an established, vibrant community of practice in election security. Yes, there was a security research core team that was looking at these issues, but it hadn't really gone mainstream. You didn't really have the vendors on board. You didn't have the operators of the systems, the practical operators of the system. But over the last 3 or 4 years, we've really worked hard to bring all those partners together and, again, create that vibrant community of practice. And so as we look into 2020 election, feel much more comfortable, much better about where things are, the security state of various systems. Are we where we need to go? Oh, hell no. I mean, there is still work to be done. Absolutely. But by coming together, all aspects of the community, we have ensured, or at least we're working towards that additional level of assurance that we're doing the right thing. We're defending democracy. And, again, the 2020 should be the most secure election in history. So again, you got to break it down. Like, why did we get there? Like, what led or what contributed to the progress we've made over the last 4 years? I kind of, I've stolen this from General Mattis, who I think adapted his leadership style from General Washington, President Washington. And it's basically 4 things: listen, learn, help, lead. So we're still, I think, in that learning phase of leadership and understanding the community, and transitioning well, I think, into the help space. But here in the aviation aerospace world, there's opportunities for leadership, and so we're looking at those, seeing what we can do again to bring this community together, bring this practical research and sharing of ideas and information. Last thing I think I'll mention is, I think it goes in just about any other discipline within the security research community is vulnerability coordination. And how do you do that in a way that gives the defender an opportunity to close out any gaps before the bad guys have proof of concept? We've seen it in the election space. We've seen it here. There are opportunities to help the defender before advantaging the offensive security side, or the offense of the threat actors. So to the extent that we can continue to build those partnerships between the security research community and the vendors, I think we're going to continue advancing towards a defensive advantage position.
No, thanks. And that touches on so many different areas. I think one of the things that you've been talking about there, from the democratization of it, for the amount of researchers and hackers that we've got contributing to the village through either breakers yards or buying stuff off the internet and things like that, and actually they're doing some really great research on what they're finding, and it's trying to make sure that those pathways exist to be able to talk about some of those findings and go through it, because that then sparks a dialogue that actually allows engagement to happen, and actually that progress to be made. So yeah, so there's loads of lessons across
Yeah,
all of that.
and to be perfectly clear here, I'm not casting any aspersions or judgment on any part of the community right now. Whether you're on the vendor side or the security research community, I think everybody's got, you know, they've, you know, you talk about ups and downs. Everybody, I think, has has made some good strides forward over the last couple of years, and we want to continue making those. But it's got to be an open conversation. It's got to be forward thinking and progressive. That's the only way we're gonna get where we need to be.
Yeah, and actually, and looking at the scale of the challenge, I mean, you touched upon the elections. On if you just sort of sat back and said, let's just protect the elections. I mean, that's a massive task. If we look across the aerospace sector, with everything from airports, the air traffic management aspects, the aircraft, and then space, be that ground stations or on orbit assets, the scale of that is huge, and it's a massively interdependent sector as well. How do we scale this from your perspective, looking at this nationally and also internationally with all of the international work you and the team are involved in? But how do we make sure that we don't do this in lily pads of excellence?
Well, and I think that's exactly what we've been doing over the last couple of years. Everybody's got their normal partners that they work with, and that really became clear to me last year. We were going through a process working with the Department of Commerce, trying to understand across the telecommunications sector, the ICT folks, where really the most risk lies in terms of supply chain vulnerabilities. Not vulnerabilities, but risks, really, more than anything. And what we found is we didn't have a really strong relationship with the satellite community, satellite industry. And it was an area that I think they realized as well, that they didn't really know what we were doing, what our role was. So to get to those elements of scale, I think it's got to be these broader conversations, talking both within government, but also with industry, and understanding what the respective lanes in the road are. And, you know, it's something I've said a couple times now, but, you know, really, you know, it goes back to that, the mantra of, you know, to improve something, you've got to be able to measure it. Well, to really scope the problem, you have to understand who the players are and what their roles are and how we can all work together. So that's what we've really been focusing on, in part through an effort that we have called the National Critical Function. So it's moving away from a 16 sector based understanding of U.S. critical infrastructure, but instead distilling it down to what are the actual services, what are the functions, really a systemic risk approach to the economy, and then identifying who the key providers of those services are. And in doing so, we'll get that better understanding of risk, better partnerships built, and then better solutions against the risks that we need to manage.
And against those risks, would you be expecting those critical service providers to be working with the research community and actively engaging with that community as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is part of our force multiplier here as defenders. The security research community has proven time and time again that it can help. I am, you know, I'm in a similar situation, honestly, to the security research community in a lot of respects. All the things we do here at CISA tend to be voluntary public-private partnerships, and the security research community working with vendors is similar. It's a partnership. So you do that by building trust, by understanding what the kind of the needs are, and then putting a capability or putting a resource or service against that need, and both sides benefit. That's how we operate, and I think that's, again, going forward, that's that culture, that community that we really look forward to being a part of, but also fostering.
No, thanks. And I think that everyone's actually, I mean, the momentum that we're building up on all of the dialogue across the aerospace security research and hacker community is building in a really nice way. And actually the engagement we've got from the vendors is great as well. And I think it's from dialogue such as that from yourselves and the other industry leads, really, is making a huge difference. And when we're talking about sort of all of the the challenges and the scale of it. How do we try to sort of not see that necessarily through partly through a workforce lens, but there's a lot of organisations now that are really throwing a lot of effort now onto securing or putting more bandwidth on their security. Therefore, how do we spin up the workforce on this from a national perspective? Because getting that crossover between aerospace and cyber security and security is really hard. Getting those people that can understand both worlds is a challenge.
Right. I think the ongoing conversations about the gap in cybersecurity cybersecurity workforce is ultimately a little bit it's almost nihilistic, right? It's like we're always going to fail at secure code, at secure deployment. And I think you've already touched on it a little bit, but I think the more opportunities for STEAM, or whatever you want to call it, at the K through 12 level is going to generate a workforce that's more technically savvy. And if we can start folding in, rather than bolting cybersecurity expertise on to the after the fact, and start building it in through a whether it's DevSecOps or a security development or a software development lifecycle, those sorts of approaches I think are what we're going to have to adapt. So it's not about building a cybersecurity workforce of the future. It's a security-minded engineering and technical workforce of the future. Let's close out these issues before we even get to them. And that's really kind of the mantra that we've got here at the agency. It's defend today, secure tomorrow. What does that mean? So today we're dealing with patching yesterday's vulns, the stuff that, whatever company dropped. Let's learn from all these examples and figure out how, for the next generation, the next iteration of infrastructure deployments, we just don't make things better by design, better by deployment. Let's make our lives a little bit easier. And I mean, frankly, it'd be great if we could put ourselves out of business. That's never going to happen, but it's not a bad thing to shoot for. So I tell you what, this is an issue, workforce education, that's personal to me. I got 5 kids here in DC that are in the public education system, and I just see day in, day out the kind of dearth of as I see it, appropriate technical education. We've got to overcome that. So there are a number of initiatives that we're working here at CISA that are intended and designed to, again, overcome those shortfalls. And it's not going to be about universities. It's not going to be about colleges. I don't think that's the solution. I think, again, we've got to have better K through 12. We have to have better trade school type education, institutes. It's about putting the tools into the hands of the future workforce, and not 4-year or post-grad programs. And last thing I'll say on this front is we also need to be smarter about the way that we bring people into the workforce. And in part, that's through our hiring practices. It's through how we advertise for jobs. The Aspen Institute cyber program last summer announced a couple different, just different ways to approach hiring. One is don't overspec your PDs. Don't overspec them. Not everybody needs, 15 different certifications and 10 years of experience for a coding language that's only been around for 4. Just be smart.
You saw that advert as well then?
Yeah, I did. That was a good one. And also use, ungendered or gender neutral terms. Unconscious bias is a thing. And how do we get away from that? How can we have a more diverse and inclusive workforce? That diversity and lack thereof in cybersecurity and technical fields is absolutely a thing. And I think it's on us as leaders and voices in the community to drive for change.
No, and hopefully that'll be the way as we go forward. And again, it's something that we're seeing through the village, is actually just trying to bring on that next generation to really get engaged on it. And a lot of the activity that we've got in the village is really at that crawl walk type activity to really have that on ramp for not necessarily the any sort of specific demographic, but anybody who wants to get involved and start engaging and learning about this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That it's an open and engaging community, and that's what makes it so great.
So just to kind of riff on this for a second, and I think about the way that the federal government here in the U.S. hires, and it's a college degree and 3 years of experience, and you too can qualify for a GS9 position. But that sort of experience, I see kids going into college at 18, having 6-7 years of coding experience, of, in some cases, development experience, certainly of research experience. So how do we bring those types and reward them for their experience and recognize that experience, and not just say, oh, you don't have a CISSP, so you're not qualified? It's absolutely wrong-headed and backwards, and we have to change that. And so there are a few things, again, that we're doing here in the government. They're trying to change that. There's one hiring regime that we're putting the final touches on, the cyber talent management system, that'll do just that. It'll look for experience, practical experience, and reward that through the hiring process, rather than saying you need that 4-year degree and you need 3 years of working in a call center. So we've got a couple things I think we can do here. It's just a matter of implementation.
No, that sounds really great. Now, before we move on, is there anything that that from your perspective we haven't touched upon, but you'd want to sort of like pitch out or engage with on the community around the aerospace cybersecurity?
Well, just to kind of do a self-serving promo here, just on the last piece, we are hiring at CISA. There are a lot of positions that we have that don't require top secret clearances. They're either the secret or the no security clearance level. I am looking for practitioners. I'm looking for people that know the community, that can work with the community. I think we have a unique offering and a unique place within the federal government that's really the closest thing to the private sector, the closest thing to the security research community. So check us out at cisa.gov/careers. We are always hiring.
There you go. Well, we don't normally do commercial pitches, but I think I'll let you have that one. Chris, many thanks for your time. Thank you for joining us at the kickoff for the Aerospace Village, and hopefully once we get through COVID, then look forward to seeing you again in person. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Pete. It's great to be with you. If I was on Room Rater, I'd probably give you about a 4 out of 10. You'd get probably 5 or 6 for all your badges, but your lack of art and any potted plants probably set you back a few. So
yeah, no, I made sure I kicked the cat out, so otherwise I'd have got a few extra points. Thanks very much. So our next guest speaker is Dr. Will Roper, and I'm honoured to have him here this morning. So Dr. Will Roper is the Assistant Secretary of the US Air Force for Acquisition, Technology and Logistics. And he and his team, along with DDS, were great supporters of the village last year and have been again this year as well. And as you can see from the efforts that we've got through the Hackersat, CTF, and also the workshops that they've brought along to the village to support us this year, they're showing a huge amount of passion in the topic, and it's great to have them here. So, Dr. Will Roper.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Aerospace Village at DEF CON 28, Safe Mode. I'm Will Roper, the head of Air Force and Space Force programs, and it is a privilege to be at DEF CON for my second year. Last year I came and was blown away by the technical talent that DEF CON has in this community of creative, inquisitive investigators of all things software driven. We brought a live hacking opportunity with one of our F-15 fighters, and yes, this community was able to get in. We left with a lot of great understanding about how to be better in the cyber domain. And we're back this year with an amazing opportunity that's going to teach the community and us how to take good cyber practices into space. Orbiting overhead right now is a satellite that hackers are going to have access to see if they can apply their skills to get in. They're going to have to understand complicated physics, how satellites communicate with the ground, and how we communicate back in order to overcome this capture the flag challenge. But seeing the talent that's here, my money is on that they will succeed. Now, how cool is that? That winning teams are going to get to have their code run live in space. And what we'll learn is how to make this new area of defense and commercial innovation more cyber secure in the long run. You know, if you back up and you look at how the Air Force engaged, we really sat behind our high walls and fence lines, and we used secrecy as a way to keep our military systems safe. That doesn't make sense in today's world. With so much technology happening commercially, we've got to get outside of our bases and fence lines and be part of this community that continues to push innovation forward. So we are here to share, we are here to learn, and to make openness and transparency part of our equation for being secure. Thank you for being here as part of the Aerospace Village. Thank you for being here to participate in Hackasat. And next year, when we're back with the next round of the thing we bring to expose to the community, I hope you'll share your thoughts about what opportunity would inspire you to help us learn how to be a better cyber warrior. For the $60 billion of airplanes and satellites and cyber technology that we produce each year, the cutting edge comes from software. Everything we learn about making that cutting edge more secure makes our men and women in uniform, this nation, and our allies and partners and all who work with us safer. So we are proud to be part of this community and can't wait to see what's ahead.